Let's take a look at some of the more advanced features of Nerve. First, let's load a drum kit so we have some sounds to work with. First thing I'm going to show is the 1 view versus the 16 view. By default, Nerve shows you the 1 view, which means you are editing the pattern for whichever pad is selected. Again, I will program a simple pattern in the 1 view, say with kick, snare, and some hi-hats. Now if I switch to 16 view, you will see the kick part, the snare part, and the hi-hat part all displaying at once. This makes it very easy to program syncopated parts that work across various pads. Let's take a look at the cutoff. The cutoff graph will allow you to set the filter cutoff to positive or negative based with the current knob position. First thing you need to do is engage the filter so that we hear the cutoff. So now you can hear the cutoff changing per step. And there is a smoothing which gets applied, so you don't hear abrupt changes unless you want to. The cutoff has various smoothing modes as well. It defaults to bidirectional, which behaves like you might expect, where it smooths both directions. The next option is unidirectional. Unidirectional will only fall, but it'll jump to a higher value instantly. The next one is falling, which is similar to unidirectional, except it does not hold the high value. It falls instantly across the step. This is useful for programming a pattern-controlled filter type of part. It's very useful on synthy and bassy type sounds as well. The smoothing knob controls the rate of the falling from fast to slow. The fourth choice for smoothing is envelope, where it will follow the envelope of the sound for the cutoff. You can also control the resonance per step, as seen on the resonance knob, and the pitch of the sample on every step, plus or minus 12 semitones. There's a panning graph as well, if you want an individual hit panned left or right. There is a gate graph, which will shorten the envelope on a per step basis. Sometimes it's nice to have shorter steps than others. The late graph allows you to adjust the timing of a step to be either early or late for that particular step. This way you can get a certain custom swing feel if you want. If you decide you want this to be globally applied to all sounds, that's very easy as well. You can use the swing menu. In the swing menu, there's an option called Create. This will take the currently showing late graph and apply it to be the current swing. You'll notice when I let go, the swing menu will now say User, meaning that it is using a user-supplied swing. You can save this if you wish as well as a preset for future use by saying Save Swing Groove. Now that we have the swing groove, we don't need this graph anymore, and we can put the swing knob at 100% to hear this swing. And it will be applying to all pads. Next, let's look at the LFO. First thing I'm going to do is draw 16th notes across a single pad. Let's enter the LFO page, and let's set up the LFO to modulate the pitch. On the right side here, you can see the destinations for the LFO. I'll raise the pitch so that we'll hear the pitch rising and falling. And let's set the rate of the LFO to be something slow, say 1 bar. Let's try cutoff instead. So we're going to turn on the filter. I'll pick a band pass. And you'll hear the same rising and falling, but this time being applied to the filter cutoff frequency. There's a pulse width modulation if you want to alter the shape of the LFO in a subtle way. And then there's the actual LFO shape that you can set here. The LFO also follows swing, which is very handy. The additional parameters you see here, delay, rise, and retrig, allow you to retrigger the LFO on particular steps. I'm going to turn the retrig on. I want to make this pattern a little more sparse so you can hear what's happening. Now every time this pad is getting triggered, the LFO is going to start over. This way you can use the LFO somewhat like an auxiliary envelope. You can click the LFO button to exit back out of the LFO view. Of course, the LFO would still be active. Next, let's take a look at the SideChain compressor. SideChain compressor allows you to get your beats to pump with a ducking sort of effect. What I'm going to do is take this kick drum and make it be the source for the compressor. We'll turn the SideChain switch on, and we'll turn the compressor off on this pad because we don't need the kick drum to compress itself. By default, all pads are enabled. So now we have all pads being ducked whenever the kick drum happens. A simple example would be if we had, say, 16th notes. I'll turn the filter off to keep it really simple. And then we'll have our kick drum happen on every beat. You can hear that the high part is now rising in volume because the kick drum is reducing its level. There's an additional ratio, attack, and release times that you can set using the parameters that are found in the host. Let's go over the effects send graph, which is the last graph that I have not shown in the pattern. The effects send graph allows you to send particular steps out to an external output so that you can use external effect plugins for processing on spot moments. As an example, I'm going to take the snare part, add in some snares. Let's have the second snare have some reverb added to it using an external reverb. So clicking on the effects send graph, I'm going to raise up the send to be halfway up the graph's length, which is 100% send. This would be 0% send, of course, off, 50%, 100%. And past there, it starts cutting the dry signal, so you're no longer hearing the snare through its intended output as routed here. Instead, you'd be hearing it 100% wet, sent to the last output pair that Nerve provides. To complete this, of course, we need to do a little routing in the host, which I've already done, but let's take a look at that. You can see this is the track which has Nerve on it, using its default settings. Over here, I've created a new audio track. I told it that the audio comes from the Nerve track, and specifically comes from the last output pair of Nerve. You then set monitoring to in so that you're hearing it in Ableton. I have then added a reverb, just a default preset, onto this. So now when I hit play, you'll hear that this second snare will be 100% wet.